Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Michelle Young gives producers an ultimatum. She says her non-negotiables, which is you will start addressing these sensitive topics on the live show or I'm out. And the producers acquiesced to her demands. And that's a good thing. That's progress. I think that's a good thing. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals, patreon.com/Dave Neal for behind-the-scenes bonus content. If you like what we're doing over here, put a little bread in the tip jar. Every afternoon, Bachelor Rush Hour, the podcast. Just stream it for free, bachelorrushhour.com. So this article came out a few days ago. The Bachelor's crisis over race runs deeper than its creator. I'm going to share some segments of this article and then some audio from the podcast Michelle Young went on, and Two Black Girls, One Rose. It's a fascinating listen. It's actually, I think, over a month old, but it just made its way to my desktop. Two Black Girls, One Rose. They do a fantastic job discussing and breaking down the social dynamics, of course, including race, as it's seen on not only The Bachelor, but other television shows. So Michelle Young's love story on her season of The Bachelorette did not end in happily ever after. She split from Nate, and they do the whole thing we already know all about, the context of her show. But here's what she says. You can't keep hurting a community of people in different cultures like this, otherwise I'm out, Michelle Young said. She told producers, it's exhausting. How are you guys going to take accountability? How are you going to move forward? And do you understand that moving forward means repairing? The comments made recently on the Two Black Girls, One Rose podcast signal the depth of the crisis now facing The Bachelor, which has already been exited by two previous Black Bachelorettes, Rachel Lindsay and Tayshia Adams, and lambasted by its lone Black Bachelor. We had the opportunity to have those tough conversations about race, but the show missed the mark. Now, to the credit of alumni, if you can afford to overcome being on The Bachelor and get better things out of your career, you do, like Hannah Brown and other former leads, like Pilot Pete. Maybe Pilot Pete's a bad example, but the point being, if you can afford to not be on one of the Bachelor-produced podcasts, you do that. Caitlin Bristow, you move on. But of course, you want to do it under your own terms, not because you're protesting the show. Michelle Young was familiar with the turbulence from her own experience. She was ushered into The Bachelor during the chaotic 2021 tenure of lead Matt James, the first Black Bachelor, whose season unraveled amid a racism scandal that ultimately led to the exit of longtime host Chris Harrison. I think we're all familiar with this story. And of course, Michelle Young said on Two Black Girls, One Rose that when the controversy over, Greer Blitzer, not Wolf Blitzer, Greer Blitzer's tweet erupted this season, she ordered producers to deal with Blitzer on air or she would step away. It was non-negotiable. And of course, deal with Blitzer might be a weird phrasing for the LA Times to put there, but address the situation and address it with the type of care that it needs, which isn't just have some sort of token response on your Instagram. What happened previously, of course, we know, was when the Eric Shore blackface scandal erupted or was exposed, he apologized on Instagram, but they never addressed it on the show. Michelle Young was in attendance at the show waiting for it to be addressed, and it didn't happen. She left furious and took some time off the podcast. And now what we're loving is that we're seeing Michelle Young voice her true opinion, which I think is what we need more of in this world. And then we'll probably get some people's responses saying this isn't a big deal. Look, they've made, and in some ways the show has moved forward. It's just progress might be slower than it can be. And when you have voices like Michelle's, you can make that progress move faster. So here's a few clips from the podcast, the Michelle Young interview by Two Black Girls, One Rose. Of course, go listen to the full thing. I'm just going to play a couple clips for you.
It was really hard for us to cover that season, and I always describe it as everything that could have went wrong with a Black man on as the lead of a dating show went wrong.
Matt James.
Absolutely. Every last thing. So what do you think about them not choosing Rodney? Because we said it was a double-edged sword that they didn't choose Rodney because we didn't trust them anyway with the Black man. So what did you think about them not choosing Rodney and choosing Zach instead?
I definitely, I've always been like a huge advocate of Rodney, and it's a difficult situation to be in, but Rodney and I just kind of, I feel like have this understand, like we respect each other at the end of the day, right? There's a lot of people involved, but like we respect each other. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and it is something where you kind of like take a step back and you look at it, and it's frustrating. But I also really sat there and had the same reaction as you guys of it's hard because it's like, is it going to be mishandled?
And of course, all of this comes after the story about the creator and what, he basically exited the show, not by his own free will, but because there was an HR investigation that there was, I don't know what they labeled it as like racial discrimination and things like that. There have been racial discrimination lawsuits in the past from former members of the crew, and cast have talked about it. So this isn't something that just came out of the blue, but now what we're learning is that, more can be done moving forward. But of course, Michelle may be weary of having someone like Rodney, who's such a lovable character, get not a bad edit per se, but an edit that doesn't do justice to what he actually could be as the lead.
Mass following anymore.
Right.
But I hope that there's representation. I hope that it goes also beyond just having like a Black male in a bachelor position or a Black female in a bachelorette position. And I hope we get into it of just, you know what I mean? Like even pushing away just the typical like gender roles, the different other, like body shape, everything. I think there's a lot of representation.
So this is a good point she's making, right? Is that a lot of people say, well, why are Black people fighting for more representation when there are no Asian leads? And what Michelle's saying is, representation across the board, size inclusivity, our friends, roses for everybody, right? The people that just, and I say this, I go, look, when it comes down to it, the lead of the show is going to pick whoever they really truly fall in love with. So why are we only giving them 20 options? If it takes 40, if you have to double the amount of people on the show as contestants, maybe that's a good thing, maybe there's, whatever. I mean, it's not the Census Bureau. It's just having some sort of spiritual, I don't want to say desire, but some sort of way where you can get more people involved in a scarcity principle, which is there's only so many seats in the limo. There's only so many roses to be given. Well, why don't we just open it up a little bit and just start to begin to share more of a story in that way? I don't know. It's a tough one to talk about. I'm not afraid to discuss it, but I am, extra careful with my words because I want to look, I'll put it this way. And for anyone who might wonder, why the hell is this white guy discussing this? I stand by the fact that it's important for diversity to be spoken about across communities. We're all humans. We know that. But this isn't one of those all lives matter spiels. We're all humans. But very specifically, a lot of people only empathize with people that look like them. We have a very large white following, not just on my channel, but of course in Bachelor, there's a large white following. And it's important that someone who looks like me has the conversations that other people who don't look like me are having. That's solidarity. That's what you do. You don't just join a union and then not walk the walk with your fellow union members. Does this make sense? So I hope we can all understand that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So seeing how Matt James's season turned out, seeing how they handled telling this Black man's story, what persuaded you to want to be the Bachelorette?
Interesting question. Great
trust, question. Production with telling your love story.
I've been asked this question a few times, and it's been really just interesting to even like sit back and process and reflect and look at it. And when you're become a contestant, like you have a massive learning curve. Especially I got thrown in super late. I had to deal with that whole concept of it. There was a lot of intense conversations that we're having. I had a huge target on my back. It was just a really, really intense season in general. And then at the end of it, I'm the person who's sitting side by side, who I was runner up. I was dealing with a broken heart, yet at the same time, I'm dealing with all this race stuff. Yes, this is my first time on TV, yet I'm still a school teacher. And there's such a massive learning curve. And so I really had to sit down and I didn't know that I was going to be the Bachelorette until about like 8 hours before I walked on stage.
What?
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't this thing that I knew ahead of time. And I made sure that I wanted to take control of my own story. So I really laid out what were my non-negotiables before I signed the contract.
Fascinating. Michelle Young lays out her non-negotiables before signing her Bachelorette contract, and this is great. I mean, obviously.
And it was being able to tell the Black story from start to finish.
Okay.
Having a diverse group of men and allowing them that time to tell those stories. And so, you know, I'm from Minnesota. George Floyd was a huge piece that came into Matt's season. It all kind of took place beforehand. A lot had happened here with like the riots. It was something that was very close to home. And I was like, I want to make sure that if these conversations come up, I have this say, like, I want to make sure that it's given enough screen time because I don't want this scanned over or skimmed over because it's a huge part of me.
Fascinating stuff. Please go check out that full podcast, the Michelle Young interview, Two Black Girls, One Rose. Give it a good rating review, help amplify that conversation. I mean, look, the show obviously will place edits and heighten scenarios and manipulate scenarios for maximum drama. We talk about this all the time. The show's psychopathic. It doesn't feel your pain. But it's one thing, and it's not, that doesn't make it right, but it's another thing when they exploit that and also bring race into the picture. That almost opens up a wound that our country has, that a large percentage of our country might not realize that still exists out there. It's worth the discussion. It's worth breathing oxygen and love into the conversation and being mindful. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment. Please be kind. Oh, I also wanted to share this. I shared this last video, but in case you didn't catch it, Tino Franco is promoting Walk for Kids, Ronald McDonald House, Southern California. They have a walk coming up, and you can register for it or just donate. They're 42% to their goal of $420,000. It, of course, helps children that are suffering or have families that are suffering from disease, and they help them sort of live a high-quality life. It's a great charity, and there's a link in the comment section if you want to donate.